I think what first drew me to the Lacrimosa Tarot was both its simplicity and simultaneous complexity. I wasn't sure when I first was seeing it make the rounds if some of the cards were going to make sense to me. It was a little hard for me to tell if they would trigger my notion of the cards. But I just kept feeling so drawn to it, and having it in person, I feel that the cards sort of awaken a different sort of storytelling and tap into a unique world. With the Nine of Wands, it's sort of what you can shoulder, and the Two of Hearts, while simple, still gives this sweet feeling of connection. The Three of Swords speaks to that facet of the three where we're creating our own misery. And the Lovers, Till Death Do Us Part, just seemed like a perfect fit, along with death. Holding something that's gone in reverence under a new moon. Overall, I'm so glad that I got this deck because it fits into a place in my collection that is unique. And that's what I love about having multiple tarot decks, is having ones with different voices and a different nuance, a different resonance to the way it delivers messages. Seven of Coins, with you feeling like you're almost under the earth with that turnip waiting to be something. And the Seven of Swords, wondering what's behind the mask. There's almost a beautiful poetry in the way things are cropped and different aspects spill off the border. The Star is one of my favorite cards in this deck for its simplicity and yet poignancy. And the Seven of Hearts does give that energy of having to discern what is real and what is imagined. The Four of Coins, with this sense of a tight grip, fits so well, as does the Five of Hearts with an empty cup in a dark room. The Tower gives me that feeling of free falling into mayhem, and the Knight of Swords I could absolutely see as being someone who's quick to cut someone else's head off. Even though a lot of the images are simple, they have such a life to them because they're using these classical works of art. The Five of Wands is one of my favorites because it just imbues that conflict with no heads being directly involved. And the Eight of Hearts feels like an abandoned song, and I love that idea. When you've worked a lot on something but it just doesn't work out and you have to turn to a new page. I love that the Knight of Coins has a somewhat reticent disposition, and the Knight of Wands is all action. Blazing into something in a suit of armor and just being at the ready for whatever comes next. The Four of Hearts, kind of looking death in the face with total apathy, fits right in. And the Six of Swords was one of the cards that I fell in love with because the white dove gives that feeling of hopeful departure. My favorite small detail as well is that in Judgment, I believe it's the only card where the figure is looking directly at you, as if asking the question, are you ready to answer the call? I love the way the cards look together, laid out, and how I feel like it's going to be an experience to weave the narrative between the cards. And for this video, what I want to do is walk you through my process of getting to know this deck and a bit about how I tend to approach getting to know decks in general. I do approach this differently depending on the deck, but I have a few sort of touch points of things I might do. And in this case, for this video, I decided to just get a preliminary pull, like a pulse check, and see As above, so below. What is it that I need to know? In my second diary entry for this deck, I will get into more of an interview spread, but this was just to see what's up. What's the first thing, maybe? The first message that wants to come through. Something quick and in the moment. And that was the Hierophant. And underneath that was the Devil. So maybe this deck is going to serve as something of a guide or teacher when it comes to dealing with attachments or toxic psychological facets, or maybe it's about the duality of the sacred and the profane and how they play off one another. Perhaps using the wisdom of the Hierophant to dig deeper and reclaim power. Whichever way it goes, I get the sense that this is a deck that wants liberation. And there's a tension between two ways of doing it here, isn't there? And I guess we'll find out together how this all unfolds, but for now, let's just get into it. I guess this is a welcome to the first official deck diary that I am doing on this channel. I'm going to see how this process goes when it comes to documenting working with the deck, because it's always unpredictable what direction things are going to go in. So I don't know how deep or not deep I will take these things. But to start, I've had this deck already for a little while now. I've looked through the images. I've pulled cards, not so much in readings, but just to lay them out and see story. I have done a couple pulls. I was going to try to wait and do everything in the deck diary, but, it is how it is. First, what I want to do is look at the two decks I have that I think will pair nicely with this. I've done this, but this is one of the first things I'll do when getting to know a deck. And just, having in mind what I might want to pair it with, because I do like working with pairings most of the time. Not always, but much of the time. Some little details about this deck. It's from Make Playing Cards. It's by the creator Rose Bay Tarot, if you don't know already. And it is a found art collage type of deck. And I love the way that she handled the images in this. So the first deck I specifically got to pair with it, and that is the Gothic, or a Gothic, which is Oracle. I really liked the aesthetic of this, but I put off getting it because I wasn't sure it was really my kind of an Oracle deck in terms of messages. But then I just got curious because I was like, you know what? I don't have anything like it. It would pair beautifully with Lacrimosa, which at the time was on the way. So the types of messages and images in this deck, they're very dark. They're gothy. This card in particular, is an interesting one to work with that I would probably pull metaphorically. I've seen some people take it out of their deck, which you can also do. But I just thought they make for an interesting pair. I think they work well together visually. And I'll show you the first reading that I did with either one of these decks, because I just thought it was pretty fascinating. But this is a mood. This is when you're in this mood, and I'm in this mood a lot. Even though it's spring, it doesn't really matter. I think they will read well together because even when I do flip throughs like this, even this pull, or not pull, but you know what I mean, honing psychic and empathetic skills with King of Hearts above and Five of Swords below, maybe in shadow. That's, I don't know. I think they read interestingly together. And they certainly pair beautifully. So this is primarily probably how I'm going to get to know both of these decks, is working with them together in this kind of a format. But we'll see, because I don't even know. It depends. It depends on how it all unfolds. Lacrimosa doesn't come with a guidebook, but for the Oracle, just so you can get an idea, you know, of let me not light it on fire, of what the book is like, you can pause and peruse. But I have found it, I mean, I've really only done one pull and then just looking through the book, but it's interesting. It's a different kind of Oracle deck from anything I have. So this will probably be my main pair, but I do have one more Oracle deck that I think looks like it's going to pair very well with it. So it's kind of, I don't know, what would I say? A backup option, maybe? I always like to shuffle in between when I'm pairing decks just to get a look at them. It's kind of like they calibrate with each other, I have noticed. The next deck is Journey of a Lonely Soul Oracle cards. I got this more to work with Persephone, so I don't know. I don't know, because I don't necessarily feel that I'd use this working with her, but we shall see how everything pans out. I just think they would read really well together. And it's making me want to work with this deck, which I haven't really. So, who knows? Maybe this will have a different purpose than I thought. That tends to happen now and again. But I think I like the way they would read together. You know, with Persephone's rising at the center and the devil above, death below. I could see it. Edge of Eternal with the Fool above, Two of Wands, which is kind of funny because this almost, maybe it's more of a Three of Wands, but it's still giving that energy of looking beyond the land that you know and being inspired to start maybe considering something else. So yeah, I just wanted to show them as a pair. I'll probably give it a go if I feel called to work with the two of these together. Ooh. Floating in the Storm, Seven of Wands, Page of Swords. But yeah, I just think the visuals and the messages would, or seem to play in an interesting way. So, it would be cool to see how they actually read in working with them. So those are the two Oracle decks that I had in mind to pair. Like I said, I did do a reading already using the Gothic Witches Oracle and Lacrimosa. So what the heck, why not? Let's take a look at that, because I think it was a pretty, I don't know, I was surprised in a good way. So the card I pulled from the Oracle deck was Shattering the Mental Prison, which is fairly self-explanatory, I would say, in terms of what the message is there. I don't remember what was in the guidebook, but I already put it away, so I'm not going to pull it out, because even the day I pulled this card, the Eight of Swords had come up the day prior, so I was in the theme of this message. And then I pulled Above and Below from Lacrimosa, and above is the sun, below the moon. I loved this reading because It's always interesting when majors or cards come out in order. It's interesting to hyper focus on the sequence of tarot when it's put into order, because I do think it kind of tells cohesive story, especially in the majors in particular, where it's like a full arc of a journey, right? Hero's journey, heroine's journey, however you want to think of it. The fool's journey. So with shattering the mental prison, above that, above the shattering is the sun. It's rising into clarity and euphoria of freedom to be authentic, right? To come back to self in an enlightened way. Rising out of the dark and into the light. Rising out of the mental prison and into the light. And then below with the moon, that's the stage before the sun. That's what you have to walk through first, which is sort of, especially with this image, making friends with the creepy crawlies and being able to kind of confront them and be in their presence and navigate through the illusion of the mental prison. Because that's all that it is an illusion that you have constructed. And it's probably connected to these deeper, unconscious facets that you've yet to fully face and navigate. So for me, that was a beautiful reading, a beautiful spread and message. And tying into the work that I had just been doing the day prior, the, cards pulled prior, it sort of summarized that arc of my tarot practice for the week, if that makes sense. The next reading that I did was because I wanted to ask a question, and it was not a particular question to a particular anybody, just of the moment. And of the moment, this was the deck that was on my desk, so this is what I went with. So I sat with the question, what is true intimacy? And pulled some cards. I felt drawn to pull 3, so that's what I went with. The first card down was Two of Hearts. The willingness and vulnerability between two people to show up and say, here I am, I see you, do you see me? That kind of connectivity of emotional recognition in another and being vulnerable. The next card down was the Six of Swords, a hopeful takeoff. The Six of Swords is also a healing journey. It's harmonizing the mind and leaving behind troubles, moving with intention towards peace. And in that sense, it speaks, these two cards together, to me of an emotional safety to leave old mental patterns, or to leave the card before this, the Five of Swords, to leave perhaps toxic dynamics where there's no winning. But now you've moved away from the idea of winning at all, and you're moving towards healing. The next card was the High Priestess. What I love about this is the idea of having that deep inner knowing, perhaps even having an unspoken understanding between each other, connecting beyond the veil, perhaps, so to speak. So to me, it speaks to an intuitive bond where there's also space for an inner world to be safe. Your intuition is not being muted in any way. The card beneath the deck was Justice, which I think is the perfect tie-in, because at the root of all of this is truth, is integrity, is honesty, because you can't have any of these things without recognizing and having that spine of truth being what upholds all of it. True intimacy is a fairness, an accountability, an agreement to act in integrity with one another. And in this case, with this card, it's striking down all falsehoods, is how I see it. So this to me is just a really beautiful, and like I thought it would be, poetic in a way, spread. What is true intimacy? It is the meeting of two hearts in vulnerability to transition towards healing and understanding, towards a hopeful departure to harmony, where your intuition is honored, and perhaps also that element of having a shared secret bond, like an unspoken understanding of one another that transcends the visible world. And all of it is rooted in honesty, in integrity, and striking down all falsehoods. And yeah, that would be pretty damn intimate, I think, to have that kind of a connection with someone. I did end up pulling one more card the next day after I had these cards out, and I'll do that often if it's a reading that kind of feels like it warrants it, to sit with it and see if there's anything else I want to explore before I move on. And for this, because I had pulled the below card, I wanted to see what is above this, in a sense of what is the higher aim. So if you think of the spread like a tree, and justice down here is the roots, and these are the branches, the above card is kind of what's above, what are we reaching towards in this authentic expression of intimacy. And in this case, it was judgment. I mentioned that this is one of the cards I really love in this deck because she's looking directly at you. And she might be looking off to the side. I think she's looking a little bit this way, but at any rate, it's one of the forward-facing cards. And in this case, to me, this speaks of true intimacy, and this can take place maybe to some degree with yourself, but just because of other things, I really think this is something experienced in the duality of the presence of another, whether it's friend, family, or romantic. True intimacy awakens you. It asks you to answer to the higher calling of who you authentically are, and I think it also asks you to reach that transformational point of meeting yourself, of meeting another, and of shedding everything that is not you, and sitting with who you really are, Fire of transformation, that's judgment. So let me see if I can fit this in a way that you can kind of see all the cards. I'll do my best. But the way I've come to see this spread and to think of it, in a more cohesive version, because I've sat with it for a little while, is that true intimacy is the meeting of two souls to transition and to move away from troubles, and if anything, lend a helping hand to help each other shift into harmony, move towards clarity and peace. Sharing that inner self that is not something revealed publicly. It's that almost secrecy or privacy of what's being shared in the connection. And it's all rooted in the foundations of truth and justice, striking down all falsehoods, and showing up in integrity. Because without this, it all falls apart. It has nothing to stand on. And the higher aim of it is that awakening not to be someone else, but to fully return to yourself and to reckon with yourself. So you have that equal partnership of vulnerability to leave behind troubled waters, to rise and be able to navigate perhaps difficult conversations or, situations, and be able to communicate through it, because we have the air suit with the Six of Swords here. being able to meet and transition through difficult moments and move forward together with understanding and grace, to have and hold that sacred space between what's seen and unseen, to witness one another, to have that deep knowing and understanding of one another in a way that transcends the visible world. I kind of think of the high priestess also as being able to welcome and trust another into the inner private world of the self. And this vulnerability kind of unfurling open that hidden self with the roses just gave me that sort of sense. And being able to have that quiet space between each other and maybe having that unseen, unspoken understanding of one another. Feeling safe enough to reveal it in a connection and having the mutual ability to deeply feel someone else's truth, where that's reciprocated by them, allowing them to feel yours and recognize, bear witness to who two people really are. Something that was really interesting about this spread to me also was the fact that we have the two with the Two of Hearts, the duality of two souls coming together in recognition of one another and shared vulnerability. The two with the High Priestess, with that tension of duality between the seen and the unseen, that kind of inner sacred space, having room to breathe, I think also came to mind for me. We have the two with Justice numerologically breaking down into two, where it's that tension between what's false and what's real, and everything being predicated on integrity, truth, striking down all falsehoods, and having the responsibility to uphold that. And then the two with Judgment, intimacy being that transformative and redemptive thing, a clarifying that burns away the falsehoods and brings you to a place of recognizing soulful truths. A place where you can shed false identities, old identities, and reconcile with the past, having a clearer sense of who you are. And I think there's truth in that when I look at my relationships where there's been the most intimate connection, through friends or conversations with close family. There's that willingness to be vulnerable and to show up with compassion for one another, to transition through something difficult towards clarity and peace in service of that, to free ourselves from that difficulty that can come with the Five of Swords, and that sacredness of the privacy of it, knowing that your secrets are safe with them. The other thing I noticed as well, we have the water element with the Two of Cups and then the High Priestess. And then we have the air element with the Six of Swords and Justice. And then above all, the fire element, but through the lens of transformation and greater purpose. So the one element missing is earth in a reading about true intimacy. That it is not a physical thing. It can be expressed physically, I think, but true intimacy at its core is not about the physicality of it. It's about the emotion. It's about the intellectual or ability to communicate honestly with good intentions. And it's transformative by its very nature. It is drawn to transformation. It leads to transformation. It leads to awakening. And if you've ever had a very intimate conversation with a friend where you've been vulnerable and they show up to meet you in that place, in that way, and you've talked through something difficult and feel like at the end of it you've gotten clarity and you know that there's this shared understanding of things unspoken and a private place where you can have the safety to do that, have those conversations or that kind of connection. You know that happens with people who you feel you can share your truth with, who you can be honest with, and who meet you in that same way, and who are truthful in and of themselves and show up in integrity. And those conversations can feel awakening. I think they usually do. They have for me, where it feels like you've achieved a greater understanding of yourself through the willingness of another to show up in honesty, with compassion, with the intention of guiding each other in a mutual way towards harmony. So I love that elementally, and then that duality of the two being so present here, and it all centering with Six of Swords, where at the center of it is a journey towards peace, and there can be difficulty in that, but it leads you to clarity. It's a journey to clarity. You know, the white dove symbolizes hope and freedom, and I love this idea of a helping hand, you know, a bracing place where you can start that liftoff process of moving past dark times, let's say. And while that does start with the felt recognition of another soul and that emotional resonance where there can be trust and vulnerability, it is about movement, an inner passage maybe from isolation or from difficulty or difficult patterns, moving towards clarity and honesty, calmer waters. The Six of Swords, you know, one of the common keywords for it is a safe harbor. And I think that being at the center of this is an interesting idea, that it's a safe harbor after you've maybe healed your wings a bit and can lift off from. And having that be a journey that comes from having a safe, kind of sacred place of privacy or stillness to be able to express maybe the inner hidden things that don't commonly get revealed about yourself or another. So this was just a really beautiful spread, and I wanted to share it. And of course, feel free to sound off in the comments if there's anything about it you see or recognize that I didn't touch on, because I think it's something interesting to think about. I like asking sometimes like a almost philosophical type of question to a deck to see how it reads. And I think we'll see how part 2 of this series, or my second entry in the diary, goes, but I'll be doing what is essentially my deck interview spread. I don't just use it when I'm getting to know a new deck. I'll use it also when I'm checking in with one I haven't used in a while, to kind of be a blueprint for how to approach or what kind of work to do together. But I sense this will be more of an emotional one, which of course I managed to pick that for one that I'm trying to do a deck diary series with, but we will roll with it and see where it goes. One other thing I hope to do with this deck is edge it black. And I do have, I realized, an ink pad on hand, and I'm not sure if I've used it before to edge a deck. I don't think so. So I'm hoping it works well. I might have to test it on some things. I don't know if I have like extra cards somewhere, or maybe the Gothic Witch's Oracle I could edge in black, because I'd be a little less freaked out if it didn't work out as well. I've had decks that I've edged black where it has wound up transferring on my fingers still, even months later. But that was with a black Tombow, which was strange because I've used Tombows in other colors and had great results. And I know a lot of people use those with great results, but the one deck I did it on actually that would probably be a good one to test the ink pad, since I could see if it really seals it up in the way that it dries down. But yeah, I think this will be a deeper deck, a more poetic deck. So we will look forward to doing the part 2. And in the next entry, go into that interview spread, and I'll show you how I do it, maybe pull the cards on camera and talk about the positions and then the way that I will use that going forward, or that I might use it going forward. One other thing I will mention is I'm going to leave in the description box links to this deck, but also links to the ambient playlists that I really love with it so far. One of them I kind of softly have playing in the background. I don't know if it will pick it up in video, but there's like 2 or 3 ambient type videos that I found that it sets up the space for me to sink into this world. I really like using ambient sound or music to help me tap into the energy that I feel from the deck, because I'm a bit ADD and it helps my brain to have the external signal that I'm in this world or atmosphere. So if anyone else is into that type of a deal, I'll leave those linked below. Something else I wanted to mention too with this was that in my journal I kind of wrote that justice is truth in love and judgment is love in truth, which is sort of a play on a way that I taught myself to differentiate between justice and judgment, because there's a similarity between them. But my kind of inner mantra that I wound up landing on is that justice is the recognition of truth, where judgment is the truth of recognition. And then for this spread, everything being rooted on justice being truth in love, that is what is just in intimacy. And then judgment is the love that comes from standing in truth of who you are, something like that. I don't know. Just my ruminations about the transformative nature of this all. But this is such a beautiful deck. I'm really enjoying it and looking forward to seeing how it unfolds. I think it will be one that, especially in the beginning of getting to know it, I will sit with a little longer when it comes to spreads and readings, because I do want to sink into the imagery. I loved the detail of that stood out to me in this, of the unfurling and inviting someone else to unfurl, and that, giving you wings to lift off from difficult times and be able to sit in the silence of each other, or the secrecy or privacy of one another, and be able to feel a deeper connection. So it was and striking down falsehoods. I love how that came through in this reading. So anyway, I'm rambling at this point. I'm going to wrap it up here, and I hope you enjoyed the first entry in this particular deck diary. And, in general, I want these to be helpful and useful. It's also fun for me in a way or interesting for me to try and document them and document my work with a deck, or my early impressions with a deck and how it unfolds, getting to know it. But if there's anything I could keep in mind to make them more useful, more better, or just questions you might have in general, or things you'd want me to address, then leave a comment down there and let me know. And it's really helpful if you like the video, so do that if you enjoyed. And I greatly appreciate you guys watching, and hope you enjoy the idea of a series like this. It's kind of something I've wanted to do since the start, or even before the start of my channel. So I'm finally starting it with a emotionally intense deck. But hey, that's how it panned out. We'll see. Other than that, I hope you have a lovely day, evening, morning, or whatever it is by you, and I will catch you in the next one.